Good morning, community. Good morning, Sevens. Good morning, all those that are out there listening to this message. Share this out. If you are concerned for your friends and family, share this message out if you know that the massive amount of information that we're being given is sometimes detrimental to our own process. Share this message out if you are for emotional intelligence, emotional sovereignty, self-identity. Share this message if you are pro-utilization of the ancient indigenous technologies in our contemporary culture. Share this message if you care for people, if you love people. Share this message if you are radical in love with people. Share this message if you care about elders, children, and everybody in between. Share this message right here, right now, if you are seeing a process of indoctrination in your friends and family and you are concerned. Share this message right here if you are just a friend of mine. Share this message if you're open to the content that I have here on Facebook. I'm going to give you a link here. This is a link to get a free copy of my book, and you can get a free copy there. For anybody that's joining me that has not seen any of my content before, all of my book, my audio book, those are free to you. So please take advantage. There's a link right there, and you can get connected with us through that. We have an upcoming group journey into the Sacred Seven, into this indigenous technology of ceremonial introduction, self-identity, emotional intelligence, relational spirituality. So what am I talking about this morning? Yesterday I opened up a room on Facebook, which was kind of cool. And it came forward that there are a lot of individuals that are living in this time frame, in this loop, that are seeing their friends indoctrinated into ideologies. And these ideologies really are processes of destruction. And when I share this, right, I feel this in my heart space. It opens up my heart, and I feel this sort of heaviness here. Because what I'm seeing is the use of social media to direct us into conversations that are destructive and are limiting in our opportunity to optimize our emotional intelligence. Now, stay with me for a moment, because I know this can turn very quickly into a negative rant about social media. And I'm sharing with you that my process is that we can utilize social media and technology to actually allow for us to live in the optimization, allow for us to live in a place of integrated relationships. What I feel is important is the awareness of the indoctrination process. Okay, no one wakes up in a cult in one day. No one wakes up in a religious fanatic organization one day. It is a process of bringing that individual to a place in which they are fully immersed in the indoctrination. Now, you might call this feeding the confirmation bias. You might call this being brainwashed. You might call this, you might look at individuals that are in the process, and you might say to yourself, oh, well, those individuals are just stupid. You know, how could they ever believe this stuff? But what happens when we open up the channel of empathy? And that comes, you know, for me, it's like right above my navel right here, when I start to feel into that, because I myself have emerged from an indoctrination process that was based around eugenics. You know, it's challenging today because we have genetic information out there that's very valuable. But when we look at the premise of many of the genetic studies that have been done, they go back to eugenics, which is really based around white supremacy. Now, stay with me here for a moment, because I'm gonna really unbox some information that I feel is gonna bring value into your life. We have systematically, as a culture, and when I say we, I'm very distant from this, because I'm believing, like you are, that we're developing a culture that serves us. So inside of our culture, right, there's a culture of integration, love, self-identity. There's a culture of the ideas that we can live in peaceful coexistence with the planet. In the contemporary culture, the use of eugenic studies and the use of genetic terminology has been a part of the agenda of white supremacy since eugenics began. One way that I can share with you that this came into my life was when the DARE program during the Ronald Reagan era came into my school, and they told us that if you have one drug addict parent, you're 50% more likely to become a drug addict. This was based on quote unquote genetic studies. If you remember the television program or the commercials that had the rat that went over and drank cocaine until its heart blew up, this was a part of this idea of these concepts and the way that we created identity around substance abuse. And for me, when I felt into that, right, when I first felt into that process, it felt like, oh, that's what I am. That's what I am. And I began to become indoctrinated. I began at that point to become indoctrinated into an identity of being a drug addict. Now, it didn't happen in the behavior until many years later, a decade later, really, that I was putting a needle in my arm, with my father, and I was using drugs, and I was, involved in heroin use. Yet this indoctrination process is not so much about behavior, it's about the I am statement. I am a Democrat. I am a liberal. I am a Republican. I am a capitalist. I am all of these ways, communist, socialist, all of these ways of identifying ourselves that take an indoctrination process. Where do we rest? When we find the indigenous technology of ceremonial introduction. This is a resting point, relative. I need you to share this out because there is a contamination that's going on inside of our community of indoctrination. And people are slipping into patterns inside of their life that they're losing their sovereignty. And they're creating ways to identify with these neo-tribal organizations that are really in a place in which they're trying to dominate others. And when we come back to sovereignty, we come back to that place of realizing that it's okay to be a child. It's okay to be a grandchild. And inside of that, in the indigenous knowledge base, the earth-based knowledge base, there's a reflection upon the feminine aspect and the masculine aspect that is non-gender binding. It's not binding to a gender identity. It's simply the acknowledgement of Mother Earth, the acknowledgement of Father Sky, and the awakening of us in the middle as the sacred child. This is really a standard and a premise that allows for us a reference point whenever we are in the indoctrination process to say to ourselves, okay, I have this foundation. Why is it that our friends and our family are getting caught up in conspiracy theories and are being indoctrinated into these holes of interdimensional space in which they are alienating themselves from the voice of comfort, the voice of love? This is something that's coming through for all of us. We've all lived in the cancel culture in which a good friend of ours that we're involved in spiritual community is now a part of an indoctrinated group. And the reason that when I look at it from the macro, I see that there's no foundation of self-identity. There's no lifeline for the individual. There's no lifeline for that person to pull themselves up out of the abyss and say, I am resting in being a child. And this is why so many indigenous communities around the world, when you study the premise of the earth-based knowledge that's inside of the Sacred Seven, and then you take that information and you apply it to your life in ceremony, you are fortifying the metaphysical, energetic architecture of self-identity. The legacy, the invitation is that we begin to start to utilize this information for our families. And when I say this, I get excited because I can see American people, contemporary American people, introducing themselves to the mountain, introducing themselves to the ocean, and for once, grandparents feeling what it's like for their grandchildren to introduce them as a part of their identity in ceremony. How gratifying it is for indigenous elders to listen to their grandchildren introduce themselves as them. This is a powerful form of self-identity that fortifies the very nature of family. If we are going to get back to what has created not just sustainable, but actually regenerative communities that are regenerating one another, that are regenerating the earth, this is the key cornerstone. It's the missing equation. And I am really excited about this movement. I'm excited about you in your process. Thank you, Nikki, for sharing. Thank you, Audrey, for sharing. Thank you, Jason, my brother Jay, for being here. Thank you, all of you here, for sharing this information and getting this out. Because it is, like you said, Nikki, it is frightening. It is scary to think about the indoctrination. And yet, when we are in compassion and we are in empathy for those of us, our friends that are out there that are in the process of being indoctrinated, in the process of being brainwashed, that are out there fueling their confirmation bias, we can look at ourselves inside of that. Many of us have gone through the breaking down of the indoctrination. We have gone through having the feeling of the earth being taken out from under us, what we called the foundation of our self-identity, which is really influenced by outside organizations, outside constructs. And I just wanted to share that much with all of you here today because, first of all, love will prevail, peace will prevail, empathy will prevail. First of all, we're called into a place of organizing a voice of love. And secondly, I'm very passionate about seeing you live in your optimization, knowing that you are a part of mending the hoop. You are a key part of this circle of influence. And I'm grateful to have you in my community. I'm grateful to have you in my life and to be a channel and a friend. And just know that I'm available. Please direct message me if you're ever in need, if you are in a place in which you need some spiritual encouragement, even just to spend an hour with me on Zoom, I'm open to that. And I just want to, always be mindful of the struggle. We have, the suicide prevention was last week. We did that huge virtual summit. It was amazing. Now we're in Domestic Violence Awareness Month, in the mental health space. And, myself as a domestic violence survivor, and when I say, it's like almost like, I hit all the touch points. Well, this is what happens when you grow up in a home where your parents are addicted to drugs. You hit a lot of the marginalized populations. So there's a question that came up here, or a comment, and it's from Nikki. Denise, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for getting this out. This is a very important message this morning. So I'm struggling with compassion at times when dealing with this because I don't feel like I'm talking to a person anymore. I feel like I'm talking to the mind parasite that has hijacked them. Yes, and this is the challenge, right, Nikki? This is where, right, the only tool that I have been able to realize in this, and this has come recently, is the process of empathy. And like I shared, myself, I know what it's like to be in the process of indoctrination, and there may be a reference point inside of you that you can go to. I know that you have analyzed your confirmation bias many times in your life. And in awakening the process of celebrating your confirmation bias, when we come to a place in which we say, oh, you know what, I was caught up in confirmation bias, and thank you, Creator, for showing me that I was looking for information to formulate that confirmation bias. When we come to that place, we give that download into the etherical. And I'm going to get into some mystical alchemy here, but we actually are that displacement of energy. We are the manifestation of the celebration of the joy of dissolving confirmation bias. And this, for me, is at the heart of awakening yourself from the indoctrination. Because if you can be aware of your confirmation bias and you can listen to the other side and balance the information, then you are able to actually come up for air from the rabbit hole of many of these processes that are unfolding. Good morning, Sammy. Good morning, Denise. Good morning, all of you that are just joining in. There's a link to a copy of my free book if you'd like to get it. We're sharing about the indoctrination process that so many people are going through, friends, family, loved ones. And this is even affecting homes where partners are feeling their partner go down the rabbit hole of indoctrination. When we awaken from the indoctrination process, okay, indoctrination in its concept is a gradual drip system. You become a part of a process or an ideology after you have digested and metabolized information and created a social structure around that information. So when you're looking for allies and when you're looking for triangulation, and you see a post and you're inviting people to that post to gang up on somebody on Facebook, on social media, you are actually participating in the perpetuation of the concepts of not only indoctrination, but the fueling of the confirmation bias, because now that person is looking at an integrated way in which they can create allies, and they're beginning to indoctrinate others into that philosophical idea and concept. So I'm going to share with you some practical information that I've used inside of conversations. And for those of you that are, maybe indoctrinated into your own thinking, this may be confrontational. So I want to give that kind of premise first. I recently was on Facebook, and I seen a friend that posted a picture, and it's been going around. It says, white people did not create slavery, but white people ended slavery. Be proud to be American. And this, for me, right, as a person who has been incarcerated in for-profit prisons, that has, my parents were both incarcerated for drug-related causes, that can look at the macro of the organization that has created opportunity for mass incarceration. What we can do is we can really begin to be aware of the indoctrination that these sorts of pictures are showing. Okay, so there's this idea, misconception. Now I'm going to say misconception because I'm going to take you to the 13th Amendment, and I'm going to take you to the exemption clause. So the 13th Amendment, for those of you that don't know, and I have educated myself on this, I was, like many of you, afraid to actually, when I think about myself and my relationship to reading, I was afraid to read because I was home insecure. Even though I had a nice house for, a few years of my life, I had a bedroom. I wasn't sleeping on a couch. Most of my childhood, on my mom's side, I was sleeping on a couch. I had a bedroom in my life for a few years. I still felt home insecure because I had been kicked out of so many places that I was living. So for me to sit down and read a book, there was an insecurity that came forward. So I understand those of you that haven't read the Constitution, you haven't read the Bill of Rights, you haven't read the Declaration of Independence, these formative kind of pieces of information. Yet inside of the 13th Amendment, there is something called the exemption clause. So the 13th Amendment, on the outside said slavery is illegal, yet on the inside of it, it said, unless you are convicted of a crime. And for me, right, this is the idea that, okay, we've changed slavery. And I can give this vantage point of the macro, having been a person that was in a for-profit prison, having been a person that has seen generational incarceration, generational addiction, lack of mental health care, lack of functional health care, period, and what that environment creates. So when you are inside of an indoctrination that you believe that slavery is illegal in this country, you have created a confirmation bias that is supported by other influences. Notice that inside of this picture, it didn't talk about the United States government, right, didn't invent slavery. It says white people didn't invent slavery. So what we've done is we've isolated a group inside of the conversation, and we've created a confirmation bias that's indoctrinating to individuals. Yet the United States has never fully made slavery illegal. And I'm going to say that again. Slavery has never been illegal in the United States. The only state that has actually recognized the exemption clause is Colorado. Colorado is the only state in the United States that has ever done anything with the exemption clause. So now if you zoom out, right, and you look at the macro of Reagan, the Reagan administration bringing in cocaine, and then you go all the way to Obama and Eric Holder, and you look at Fast and the Furious, which was an ATF organized giving of weapons to drug cartels, you can see that, if you're giving weapons to people that are brown, that are native, native indigenous Mexicans, right, you're perpetuating the idea of this warfare that leads to slavery. Okay, look at Obama and Eric Holder. Look at Reagan and the CIA operations of cocaine. Daddy Bush and his operations with the CIA and cocaine. And you can see a legacy that leads people back to slavery. Now, I know that this may be confrontational to some of you out there, and it may be edgy, but this is how we begin to unpack the indoctrination process of white supremacy. And when we look at it and we can see the macro, and we can see that there is an organization inside of that is documented, we can begin to help people unpack what they're actually experiencing. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for sharing this information. And I wanted to share that with you because I did see results. I was in a debate with people on this very premise, white people did not create slavery, but white people ended it. And when I brought them to the exemption clause of the 13th Amendment, there were some kind of radical ideologies that came forward like, oh, we're talking about old slavery. That's literally what the author of the post said. I'm not talking about new slavery. I'm talking about old slavery. And that for me, right, was something that was very important to realize because I did give them the information that hopefully brought them out of a layer of indoctrination. And I made a friend who was a self-confessed libertarian that was basically in a space in which they were arguing that the United States has ended slavery, but did not know about the exemption clause and couldn't relate the exemption clause to for-profit prisons. So what I'm sharing with you are some tools that you can apply into your life that you can hopefully help individuals that are being indoctrinated into either ideas of political, holes in the earth that are sucking them into, or ideas and concepts of white supremacy, ideas and concepts that are associated with radical religious ideas and concepts that are a part of the fueling of confirmation bias. Emotional intelligence gives us that opportunity to step into that space. I am sure that that's happening. There's the integration of the way that the world's companies work are something that is very, it's very profound. Also, another thing inside of that, which I haven't mentioned, is those of us that are investing money. If you're investing money, I'm not investing money in anything other than our business. But if you're investing money into an IRA that has stock in for-profit prisons, you are contributing to slavery. Okay, so look at your portfolio, look at where your money's going, because the awareness factor, right, of the cushy retirement that you have that's being bought and paid for by people that are incarcerated because of all kinds of different organizations, it's important for us to actually be aware of those things. So I wanted to share that much with you here. I hope that this brought some value to your life. I hope that it's something that you can share with enthusiasm, and you can begin to really, first of all, do your work on your confirmation bias. Do your work on what you are seeing and believing. Ask yourself, can I listen to the other side? And it's challenging. It's challenging at times, especially in the separation that we're in right now, to listen to the other point of view. But I promise you, if you begin to celebrate your confirmation bias, you are going to find sovereignty. So you're the one that I care about, right? I can point fingers at the other side all the time, but you're my community. And I want for all of us to be in a place of emotional sovereignty, of emotional intelligence, of self-identity. And again, getting back to these indigenous technologies of the foundation of the experience, it gives us a premise and it gives us a space to come back to. Hey, I love you guys. I'm just going to go into the prayer place now for a moment here and just connect in a good way. So if it's available for you, I invite you to join your heart with mine, through this technology, and we'll just come into a prayer. So Mother, Father, Creator, Source, we thank you for this opportunity to be in this prayer place that was founded before the creation of time. We thank you for this land of the Akmel Atam, the Pipash, the Maricopa, the Inde, this land of Arizona, this land of vastness, this land of Maricopa County. We thank you for all the lands that my relatives are joining me on, and we thank you for the air, the water, the fire, the earth, gravity, time, spirit. We thank you for the sacred angel beings that are even working now as we proclaim our richness our richness of prosperity, and our love for this source energy. We thank you that today is a day in which we awaken ourselves to the indoctrination. We thank you that today is a day that we awaken the process of understanding the confirmation bias, in which we can navigate with effective nonviolent communication and hold the place of love for those that are in our lives. We pray that you would dissolve the barriers of limitation from keeping us from an integrated place of abundance, in which every mouth is fed, every house is full of people that need housing, every medical condition is met, and a place of complete abundance, Creator, a place in which we dissolve the scarcity mentality and we live in the power of knowing that this sacred Mother Earth and this beautiful Father Sky are here to provide for us. We rest in the place of being sacred children. Beauty above, beauty below, beauty beside, beauty in front, beauty behind, beauty within. I am, we are made beautiful again. Blessings, relative. Love you guys so much. Thank you for sharing this, and look forward to connecting. If you're not a part of our email list, we do have a class coming up next Thursday. It is going to be a dive into the Sacred Seven. Without a foundation for self-identity, it is very easy to get caught up in all of the struggles of this world. Please come to this free class. It's going to be an online class. And you can get connected with it at The Sacred Seven on Facebook or in my events on my personal page. Blessings, everybody. You guys have a great day.